Hey guys, and welcome to Little Blackbird 91. Listen, we're giving you guys another one of those conversations once more again. We are talking about therapy, but we're talking today about this subject: why men fear failure and how that stops their success. Why men fear failure and why that stops their success. Forgive me, I was trying to wait for my washing machine to end, but it's not trying to end. So, where show must go on, they say, right? Also, want to let you know as well, the show is sponsored by BetterHelp. So, I want to let you guys know up front, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. I'm using them as well to do my own therapy. So, listen, if you are somebody seeking out therapy, there is a link down below in the description box. It has LBB91 as well. It will get you 10% off your sessions as well. So shout out to BetterHelp for sponsoring this particular show as well today. Let's get into some conversation because I want to be honest with you. This particular topic is a really powerful one. I'll tell you why it's powerful, because a lot of men oftentimes struggle with an area of failure. And the reason why we struggle so much is because there is something to fail at. Men oftentimes are not. Let me put this very bluntly. Men are not valued by just being. They are valued simply because they themselves have something to offer. They must produce something. Okay? All right? They must produce something. Okay? So for any man out there, okay, all right, who is seeking to, be something, we're always striving to achieve something. And the reality of the situation is that when it comes to us as men, we are valued by what we produce. Call it patriarchy, call it men rule the world, call it whatever you want to call it. You are going to be valued by what you produce. And since you are going to be valued by what you produce, you will also feel a sense of failure when you don't produce according to what your potential is considered to be. So in that, let's have a conversation today a little bit about the fear of failure and maybe where my own sense of fear of failure actually comes from and why it's such a struggle with myself. In fact, I literally went to pray this morning. And I mean, I went to pray this morning and I was like, you know what, Lord, I'm struggling at the moment because I don't want to fail. I don't want to fail. I don't want to, not produce at the rate that I can produce. I don't want to feel like I am not at the level I need to be at. Okay. And so in doing so, I had to go and pray. I was like, Lord, help me, because I feel like a failure at this moment. And when you feel like a failure, you can kind of get locked into your own head and locked into your own world that you struggle, you stop moving, right? Because you're now thinking that anything I do, it won't work. And this kind of thought process locks you into a place where you just can't be free. I was just thinking about it this morning. I was like, when I was talking to my therapist, one of the things that came up was a fear of failure and how oftentimes we try to mitigate those circumstances. So for instance, myself, how I mitigate failure is to consider every possible solution before it even gets to anywhere. I'll make sure that, I'll plan this, plan that. And the reason being is because I want to make sure I don't fail, right? So what happens is I get analysis by paralysis, and then sometimes I don't even go anywhere with it, bro. And then I don't even make a decision. I don't even move forward because now I've got analysis by paralysis because I had to analyze a million different responses and a million different options that now I don't even move. So now I'm stuck. So now my fear of failure is now even getting me to a place where I'm stuck in my own thought process and I don't even move. Guess what's going to happen? You are going to fail. Okay? You are going to fail. All right. So let's talk a little bit, like I said again, about why men fear and why they fear failure. And I think my title's a bit wrong, so I have to edit that a little bit later. Why we fear failure and how that stops success in the next 20 or so minutes. Please, if you are new to the channel, make sure you like, you share, you subscribe, you click on that bell button for notification of the uploads as well. And for those of you who are returnees, you already know what it is, baby. You got the minerals. Once again, I want to let you know the show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And the following shows will be sponsored by them. So whenever I do these therapy talks, know that it is sponsored by them. And if you are looking for a therapist, you're looking for some kind of counseling, please click on BetterHelp as well and use the code LBB91. You will get 10% off, and I promise you, it does help as well. I mean, and I get a little commission. I ain't gonna lie to you, so you know me, I ain't gonna lie. So let's get into this particular aspect of conversation as well. As always, I like to start at the very beginning. I like to have the oops, and the oops is the origin of pain. Now, you've heard this story several times before. I'm going to give it again because it is part of the origin story of where my fear of failure comes from. But the story where I told you guys about where I gave my homework to my dad and he, instead of helping me, kind of beat me, right? And what that led me to do when he did that was it led me to a place of being very independent. And the problem with being very independent is you got nowhere else to fall back on, right? You either got to make it or you die, right? And unfortunately, the shame and the guilt of not being able to make it or feeling like you're not going to make it locks people into a fear of failure, right? That you struggle to want to change because you're afraid that if you change, this thing will no longer support you any longer. Let me go back. I've gone forward a little bit too fast. Let me go back. The origin of the origin of pain, the OOP, the oops, is that there was a situation with my homework as a young kid. I gave it to my dad. And, when I gave it to him, I told you guys that he beat me when he gave it to me. And he was saying, think. Get it right. Get the solution right, right? And that is a lot of the ways that Africans kind of deal with things. Think. Beat. Get a solution in your head. If you don't have a solution, it's because you're not thinking enough. And that in itself, for me personally, made me want to pull away from the parent caregiver. And then I started learning how to do things by myself because I didn't want to get beaten. The problem with being independent so highly for someone like myself and others like myself, not everyone feels this way, right, is that you are not a perfectionist, right? And you're not very high on detail. So if you're someone like this, you understand what I'm talking about. Me personally, I'm not very high on detail. I'm the big picture, not the minute details. If you're somebody who's very key on the minute details, this probably doesn't affect you. But for those who are more on the bigger picture, the minute details are a problem because you're only thinking about the bigger picture. You're a creative person. You are somebody who enjoys freedom, the freedom from creating and being in that space. You're not really concerned about the minute details. Unfortunately, when I became more hyper independent, the minute details are what actually makes the minute details are actually really important, right? Whereas someone like me thinks about the bigger picture. So when you're making mistakes, the trouble is you're seeing things from a bigger picture, not a small, minute place. That now means what happened to me personally is that I struggled because I wanted to be a perfectionist, but I didn't know how to get into the details, right? I wanted to be a perfectionist, but I struggled to get into the details. And the details are what make up the bigger picture, right? That's what makes the bigger picture work, is the smaller details. I don't want to deal with the smaller details. It's too much hassle and too much brain power. I want to think about the bigger picture. I want to create and not have to think about the process and steps. Let me give an example. If I'm cooking, I don't want to look at all the instructions about how to cook the meal. I want to freestyle. Don't constrict me too much. The problem is when you don't follow instructions and you cook the meal, today you might get it right, but tomorrow it might be inconsistent. And the next day it might be different again. And the day after it might be different again. And what you can't do is have a process. Therefore, the point of learning becomes very difficult because you don't have a process. This life is almost scientific. You have to have a point of process to know where you went wrong. See, when I think about relationships, that's how I think of a process. When I think about life, I don't think about process. The minute details exist for me in relationships, but they don't exist when it comes to the bigger picture, when it comes to life in general, like business and YouTube and stuff like that. I don't like thinking about that. It's too much effort. So what happens is you make mistakes, but you can't correct the mistakes because you don't know where you made a mistake because you only think about the bigger picture. You're freestyling, right? So what happens is now you become afraid. For me personally, I became afraid to make mistakes because now my livelihood depended on it. Let me give you an example. I didn't really get pocket money like that, but I did, but a little bit. Let's say £15 or $15, you want to say it, pocket money, right? At 15, 16. I started working at 16, right? I went to McDonald's, I started working, okay? All right? And at that point, because I had been independent for so long, I never did, at that point, 16, I never asked my parents for money again. Okay? The food in the belly, the roof over my head, and the clothes on my back, okay, clothes on my back's probably a stretch, was provided by the parent giver. But everything else was taken care of myself. If I wanted a phone, I went and got it. I went and got it, but I paid for it myself. If I wanted extra food, I went and paid for it myself. If I wanted to go somewhere, I paid for it myself. Now, what happens is now my livelihood and my lifestyle that I'm living is dependent upon me providing for myself. I no longer have someone I can rely on. There's no fallback plan. But I'm also a person who doesn't believe in the details. So now when I make mistakes, I'm scared because if I make a mistake, my livelihood is at stake. And I can't re-engineer it because I have no process. Right? I had no process. So at that point in time, what's happening is from a very young age, the independence is birthed in me because my parents would tell me, one of my funny things my dad will tell me is, if you go somewhere, know how you're getting back, because it's not me who's coming to collect you. Now, it's not a bad. It's just that Africans want you to be independent because they understand that we're born in survival and no one's going to hand it to you. No one's going to come and save you. Okay, so for me personally, what's happening is no one's coming to save me. Okay, I can't rely on a parent giver now. All right, I'm not a detail orientated person. I'm more the big picture. And now I'm strong, independent. But I'm also afraid of making mistakes because I don't have a process to be able to work it back through and go, okay, I made a mistake here, change it. I'm more of a, let's go with the wind and let's go with it. Right? That was me. So now the fear of failure is because I know now there is literally no other way for this to work. Right? There's no other way for this to work. You can't afford to fail anymore. And I remember this situation as well. I remember I got my degree at the time. I got my degree and everybody was like, you've got your degree now. And everybody expected something magnificent coming from me. And I was like, I don't know what they expected because I don't know what I want. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know. I've got ideas, but none of them are executable. And again, I'm afraid of executing some of these ideas because it takes time, energy, potentially some money. And also, if I fail, who's going to pick me up? I don't have time to fail. I need to go with something that's a sure bet because I have no time to fail because nobody's going to pick me up. No one's going to pat me on the back and say, you know what? You did well there, but you maybe fix this and get back on. No one's telling me that. There is no support. None. So when you don't have that support that you need, you are going to fear failure. You've got two options, two things that make fear failure. A critical home, okay, a very critical home, and an unsupportive home. When you have both, you've only got yourself to back. And depending on your nature as well, how you deal with things, I'm a big picture kind of person, there's nowhere to fall. Because there's no support coming from the left, there's no support coming from the right, there's no support behind me, and there sure ain't no support in front of me. Right? So now at that point in time, okay, I can't afford to take risks because it affects my livelihood and my lifestyle. And it affects my status. You cannot come and be a failure. You understand? Yeah? So, here's one of the problems I encountered. Once you realize mistakes cost and there's no fallback plan, and there's no fallback plan, or there's no one to support you in those moments, you don't want to fail. And the reality of life is you are going to fail. But you don't want to fail. But you are going to fail. Right? So that's a problem. If you can't afford to make a mistake, you're going to make a mistake. Because you're young. Right? So you're not perfected yet. You've not got experience in an area yet. Life in your young years are for making mistakes. But if you've been told you can't make a mistake, you're going to make a mistake. And what happens when you make a mistake? You cover it up. Mistake number two, problem number two, is you start covering up your mistakes. And by covering up those mistakes, you make more mistakes. And those more mistakes that you cover up makes more mistakes. Very soon, you're in a hole that you don't want to be in because you're covering up the mistakes that you made. El Cid said, I was told if you fail, make sure you get up each time. I wish I had those words. You can't afford to fail. You can't afford to fail. Right? Problem number 3 is there was no value in just being. There was only value in what you produced. So for me, failure is not an option because it means, and this is problem number 4, you're incompetent. So you have no what do you call it? You have no value as an individual when you're not producing. So now when you have to produce and you make mistakes and that produce doesn't work, you are now critically looking at yourself. What value do you hold in society? What worth do you hold in society? Who are you? Are you even a man? Right? Which again goes to point number 4, which I said was failure leads to powerlessness. When you feel a sense of failure, you feel powerless as a man. As an individual myself, when I failed or I felt like I failed, I felt powerlessness because there was no one else to pick me up and encourage me. Right? And not only that, because of my independence, I didn't want to reach out to anybody when I did fail. I didn't want to. And actually, what it's actually done is it's made me afraid to try new things because I'm always afraid that if I fail, I'll be looked at as incompetent. It's a big thing, right? I get scared to try new things because I feel like if I fail at it, I'm incompetent and I'm not worthy and I don't have no value. Let me give you a real-time example. I have 3 YouTubes, right? 3. All with great ideas. Little Black Book, Dark Arts, and Pray Like You're Mad YouTube, right? So each individual one, when I've started them, I've had a great idea at the point in time. And literally in my head, they're great ideas. I start them, but I don't finish them, right? Now, of course, there are circumstances within that, but let's just say that. I start them, but don't finish them. One YouTube is kicking off. It's now on 80K. This one that you're on right now. So on 80K, it's killing it. Okay, I should start a second YouTube, right? And then do specific topics I want to do. But then if I start something new, my energy will be taken away from this one. And then what if this one doesn't work? What if that one doesn't work? And then I take away my energy from this one. And then that starts to fail. What would I do then? I got nowhere to turn. Why do I feel like that? Well, because there's a fear of failure. Simply put. I'm afraid to step my toe in new areas because I don't know what it is. And if I don't know what it is, I can't control the circumstances. Yes, I don't delegate the details because I don't want to look incompetent. I can't delegate the details because I will look incompetent. And I can't ask for help because we've done this video already. We can't ask for help because if we ask for help, we look incompetent. Can't ask for help because that's not what I was taught. Can't ask for help because if I ask for help, you're going to want something in return. Do you get what I'm saying to you? So as an individual, you know, can't ask for help, can't delegate the details because I don't want to feel incompetent and I don't want to feel like a failure. But that's also part of why the failing is actually happening. You get what I'm saying to you? Those are the struggles we feel. You know? Those are the struggles we feel. Absolutely, Elsa, I definitely hear you. But it doesn't make a difference to how I feel. How I feel is that I feel incompetent. Even though I know what you're saying is true. We know this already. We know that we're aware of the shortcomings, but that's not how we feel. How we feel is incompetent. Right? So we have to get over that hump. That's how we feel. We We have to get over that hump, but that's how we feel, right? So those are some of the problems, right? Those are the 5 things I think problems that we have there. And those fears of failures and stuff are real things. You know, and thank you, Jeffrey. That's exactly what I'm talking about. When you ask for help, the mind of a man sometimes is that it's an inconvenience or a burden. Exactly. That's what it is. We feel those thoughts. They're not right, but they are those thoughts. You know what I mean? Oh, I know, Elson. I know you don't see me as incompetent. I know you don't see me as incompetent. So yeah, that's me personally. So let me break it down in part 2, because like I said, I want to do a part 2 where we break it down specifically for men in general about this topic. That was my personal process in terms of that. But let's break part 2 down for you guys in a second.
Little black girl, you know what time it is. Time it is. Time it is. Time it is. Time it is.
So, why men fear failure and how it stops success, all right? As we just said earlier on, one of the biggest things is that the feeling of failure is often linked to incompetence, right? If you fail, you're incompetent. And therefore, if you're incompetent, what value do you hold in society? And partly, I understand where the process comes from, because we live in a particular society where, you want to call it a capitalist society, you have to produce. But the mindset is where we have an issue as men oftentimes. The issue that we have is that we tie in failing with incompetence and incompetence with our value. We don't tie in failure with a lesson learned and growth, which is where we should be, right? We tie in failure with incompetence and incompetence with value, when it should be failure linked with lesson learned, linked to growth. We're in the wrong cycle. And because of that fear, success struggles to come to you. Because once you get locked into a cycle of, I fear the failure because I'm incompetent, and value, you are going to be disheartened, disenchanted, you are going to feel discombobulated, and you're going to feel devalued in those moments. And when you are in that place of depression because you feel these things about yourself, you are not going to be able, you're not going to be able to come out that place. So you need to link your failure to a lesson learned to growth. Now I know better, I can do better, right? That's a mindset we need to have. Number 2, not every problem has a solution. Many men are born into an idea that we must solve every issue. And when we don't solve every issue, it links back to my value set, my cycle again. When you don't solve an issue, you're incompetent. And what value do you hold as a man when you can't solve an issue? Okay? All right? When you can't solve, so a lot of us as men are problem solvers, and the problem is that we're trying to solve an issue. One of the issues that we're trying to solve, or at least one of the issues that are coming up, is that we, again, because we are trying to solve an issue, and sometimes that problem doesn't have a solution, we feel incompetent, and then we feel not valued. Let me give an example. Man and women, if you're married or you're in a relationship, you've been in one before, you know exactly what this is, right? You've been dating somebody. Your girlfriend comes to you and says, maybe I'm having problems at work, right? Your first instinct is to try and solve the issue. You're having problems at work? Well, maybe you need to quit, or maybe you need to talk to your boss, or maybe you need to have a meeting. Your first issue is to offer a solution. And in reality, what happens... Oh, my camera's gone off there. I apologize, guys. Oh, there we go. And in reality, what happens is that as obviously, you get to a place where, sorry, someone was calling me. Yeah, in reality, when you get to a place where you're trying to solve that person's issues, it is oftentimes not about the other person, but about how you feel. As men, we do this quite a lot, where we try to solve an issue and it isn't about them. It's because we feel uncomfortable not being able to solve the issue. Because as a man, our value is so tied in solving issues, and yet you're creating more problems that you're going to need more solutions for. Let me give you an example. By giving the person a solution, now your partner may feel some type of way because they never wanted a solution from you. They wanted you to listen. Now you've got another problem. Now the person's hurt by by you giving a solution because you didn't listen. And what are you going to do in that moment? Are you going to give another solution or are you going to listen? So there is times where we try to solve a problem and the problem doesn't require a solution, or at least the solution isn't according to what we feel it is to fix it. Sometimes you just need to listen. And that's where sometimes you just need to be still and know that he is God. And this is where I'm in a season right now, and this is why I'm sharing this. I'm in a season where I'm like, be still and know that he's God. Be in a place where you can receive. It's not always you're trying to strive to go and get. Be ready to receive, okay? And so that was something that came to me as well. Failure is okay. It's a part of the learning curve and the learning process and growth to being better. A lot of times as men, like I said, the learning process, we want to skip it because really and truly, because again, it feels like we're wasting time. You know, when we're learning these lessons, it feels like we're wasting time because it still hasn't solved the issue immediately, right? We're looking for immediate solutions. Why hasn't it solved already? Right? I cannot stay in this place again of not solving it, because if I do, what does it say about me? Okay, and the next point is your value is not only in doing and producing, but it is in who you are quintessentially as well. I know you may not have had the opportunity for someone to tell you that you're valuable outside of what you produce. Your value isn't just what you produce and what you do. Your value is also in a space of who you are. Okay, you know, so that is also important. Your value is in doing and producing, but it's also in who you are as well. And my final thing on this point, because my time is coming to an end, is that Christ said that Paul said for that this in Corinthians, I think it's 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9. He says, in my weakness, Christ is made strong. In your weakness, this is an opportunity for you to admit that you can't solve an issue and you need help, whether that's from friends, family, colleagues, associates, people in your circle. You need help. And what that leaves room for is for God to be God. And sometimes God uses people to reach out to you. It's not always that is a magical hand that reaches from heaven and touches you, right? So let me say it again, that Paul said in 2 Corinthians 2, I think 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9, he says that in my weakness, Christ is made strong. Okay, all right. And when he's made strong, it allows us to admit that we don't have always the solutions to a problem, which also allows for room for God to be God. And sometimes God being God is that he sends someone to you that is able to help you in that season and able to give you strength where you are weak. So if you're somebody out there like myself, where you're so independent, so strong, and trying to do everything on your own, there is a time where you need to say you are weak and you need help. And in that help cometh someone the Lord can send your particular way. Okay, all right? So we're going to leave it there. I appreciate you guys. Listen, the fear of success, I totally understand it. And I understand the fear of failure in this aspect. But I want you to know that you are more than just your failures. I want you to know that your failure does not dictate your value. And actually, your failure is a part of your learning process. And if you can learn from it, I'm telling you, you're going to grow from it. And if you can grow from it, you're going to be better off for it. So make sure you like, share, subscribe. You click on that bell button for notification of uploads. Don't forget, this live is sponsored by BetterHelp. If you do need a therapist or a counselor out there, someone to help you, then I'm telling you right now, click on the link down below in the description box, BetterHelp. Use LBB91, that link, and it will get you 10% off your next 10% off your first few sessions as well. All right. Okay, so we appreciate you as well. Yes, lovely tuning red. Thank you. 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9 to 10. Okay, I appreciate you guys, and make sure you have a great day. We'll see you again a little bit later on. Much love, much appreciation, and we'll see you again soon.
Little black, you know what time it is.